How people saw the public diplomacy aspect of what the BBG does and what our lane is in that regard. And really our lane is journalism, credibility. If we ever become a propagandist, then we've given away the most important thing that we have, which is our credibility, that our message is really based in the truth, not in some ulterior motive. So one of the largest things I took away, frankly, as I learned about the various aspects of the BBG was the need for us to do what all media executives do, and that's measure the reach and the impact of the content that you develop. Now in the private sector, you hear a lot about ratings, and there are ratings, but I can tell you at Scripps, ratings were only half the story. The other half was about engagement. What happens as a result of somebody having access to your programming, having watched your programming, and then what action do they take as a result of it. That same principle is important with BBG. Reaching an audience in key areas, having that audience consume our media and our journalism, and then measuring what happened as a result. What's the actual occurrence that happened as a result of our work? There are some really interesting examples that predate me, but I think they're worthy of pulling out. 3 interesting examples of how the BBG has impacted really important, really hard places in our world to navigate. One was in Nigeria, where there was an endemic of polio and a misinformation campaign throughout the country that CDC, elements of the United States government, were in there trying to use the vaccine as a way of harming people instead of helping them with polio. The BBG, Voice of America, did a series of reports, PSAs, town meetings, engaged the issue straight up over 2 to 3 years, and ultimately was very key in helping eradicate polio in Nigeria, taking it off the list of countries with endemic polio by the MBN, or Middle East Broadcasting Network. And that's a program that they've initiated called Raise Your Voice. Multimedia program throughout Iraq that allows people to interact on live radio call-in, interact on Facebook and other social media platforms. Just a chance for citizens to speak out and have their voice heard. And the power of that has just been incredible. Central to that is an immensely powerful program called Delusional Paradise that took cameras into the homes of families that had fighters who left for ISIS literally in the dark of night without even so much as a note. And these cameras go into those homes to show what's left behind and what the pain and the hurt that's left in the families of those dispatched fighters. And then third, just happened last week. I received a letter from Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud about the constitution that Somali has drafted after their constitutional convention over the last year. And it turns out VOA, the Somali service, and through a partnership with Google Ideas, which is a subset of Google, did a national survey of Somalians about what they think would be important in a constitution as it's being written for their country. The Somali government asked for access to the results of that survey, and as a result it was used in the drafting of the new constitution for Somalia. And so impact can be measured in many ways, but it's hard to question what kind of impact it is when you become a resource for a country to rewrite a more forward-thinking democratic constitution. So with that kind of impact in mind, and with the conversations I was having all summer and continue to be having today, and hope to continue today, that this becomes a conversation, because I don't expect to speak long. I want to hear your questions and comments. But I do want to talk to you about 5 areas of distinct importance that have come through all of my conversations. I think of them as themes that have emerged from all of the various discussions. The need for the BBG to enact a much more aggressive market-driven shift to more mobile, digital, and social distribution for our content. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a baby with the bathwater. There's still a place for radio, clearly. Television is still dominant, and even shortwave radio has its place that's critical. But what can't be denied is this massive generational shift towards the consumption of content on mobile and social and digital platforms. Our 5 entities that I mentioned earlier to begin working more cooperatively and strategically together. Not to say that hasn't happened in the past, but it wasn't really designed strategically for these entities to work cooperatively, then have a greater impact where working individually might not, or might even have duplication of effort rather than complementary effort. One really good thing that's happened as a result of this kind of thinking is a new program called Current Time running through VOA and through Radio Free Europe across all of Eastern Europe on broadcast television stations. Half of the program is produced through VOA, half through RFE and RL, and the program brings both the American perspective and the perspective on the ground and pulls it together in a way that no single entity. The next theme, the third theme that's emerged, is this notion of curating more content to complement original content. In other words, we don't have to create everything that we bring to the world originally. There's so much about America's story that's being produced around the world, around the country, if you will, that we can pull together, curate, and then bring to the world as an expression of the American story. It's also an opportunity to curate and even commission content from other content producers around the world. Perhaps there are dissidents in other difficult areas whose voices are being held down that the BBG could help elevate and amplify. Fourth theme that was very clear is really making sure we target our resources to key spheres of influence. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in just a second. The idea is to make sure our resources are pointed at the most difficult areas where public diplomacy and great journalism are needed the most. More on that in just a second. And that brings us back to the greater accountability through measuring impact. Write that word down and underline it and put a highlighter on top of it. If we don't have impact, if we don't measure impact, if we don't hold ourselves accountable to having impact, then anybody could reasonably question how our resources are making a difference in the world. This will lead to a sixth theme, if you will, and this is something that was already going on at BBG that, frankly, as a citizen, I was thrilled about, and that's the expansion of global internet freedom. And our goals are to really think about how to expand this effort. In the last year, I think we invested about $14.5 million in technology that helps enable people who don't have access to the internet or who are being censored for access to the internet, to give them tools to make them capable for accessing a free internet. So we want to dramatically expand that capacity with new tools for new platforms and escalate end-user content contribution capability and capacity. In essence, we want to make as many people in the world as we can to have access to free and unfettered information. And the amount of access that's being blocked around the world is stunning, and it's growing. A theme that really was my theme, honestly. As I learned more about Voice of America and the work they've been doing for 50 years on helping people around the world learn English, it occurs to me that what better thing could we do than to advance English language speakers around the world, because the alignment of those who speak English and understand the American ideal is just so tangible. And what's our version 2.0 for learning English? How can we use digital, social, mobile platforms to expand English-speaking individuals around the globe? So those are some early thoughts for me. As I said, I began in mid-summer, early summer, came on board full-time in September. Now it's November 2nd. I have much to learn, but those are the themes that have emerged from me as we think about a framework for building the resource allocation to have the greatest impact around the world.